I can say that Max is one of the people here that took full advantage of every opportunity, that hopefully all of you are doing as well. And he's also someone at the end of the day, at the end of his career here, was very thankful for all those opportunities. Evidenced by him being here, evidenced by him doing his commission ceremony here, and I think it's a great role model for all of you to follow. He was a big part of this stage. He was a prefect, gave announcements here. He did a dance routine or two here that is very legendary, and if anybody wants to challenge him to a dance-off, you will lose, all right? Guaranteed. He sang for coax. He sang a Bee Gees song, I believe, among others, long ago, and I knew him probably best through coaching him in basketball, where he was a prolific three-point shooter, and I believe he scored 38 points in one game. He almost played for me on the golf team, but I'll leave that for another day. Golf is a very cruel sport sometimes. So on all the accomplishments I just read about Max, very impressive. A lot of you seniors now are already doing the same thing in your college applications, but obviously it only tells part of the story. And I've given you a little bit of inside the things that, that Max gave to LFA and is continuing to give back. If you ask him to recite many movie lines, he can do that, especially classics like Old School, which he might even include today. We'll see. But I will say that the most interesting thing is, as I read those things, a lot of you are saying that that's not the traditional path that LFA graduate takes after college. All right? He went into the Marine Corps. A lot of you probably are not even thinking about doing things like that. And at the time when he was graduating college and he decided that was the path he was going to take, I think there was friends among them, a person standing here among them, that was probably a little skeptical. They're kind of wondering, why aren't you just going to business school right now? Why aren't you going to be a lawyer? Why aren't you going to follow in the path that a lot of people do? And what we should have known was that if you know Max, whatever he's going to do it full bore. And he's going to be successful. And I'm almost there. All right. So what I'll say is we're thankful he took that path. The people that served with him, very thankful. His family, very thankful. And obviously, as a country, we're thankful for everything he does. All right? And I better get off stage. All right? So please join me in welcoming Max Bernstein.
Jesus. So, didn't expect to get emotional before I even got up. First of all, I have to say thank you to a lot of people. First of all, to the school. I can't even begin to describe the impact this school has had on my life, and specifically how much Matt and Susie affected my life, both while I was here and then more than they could ever know afterwards. So, wasn't just my coach, was a mentor and a friend, and has continued to be throughout my entire life. So first of all, thank you to you guys, and thank you to the school, because it's just an incredible experience. I included this picture just so you guys actually do believe that I went here, and I know what you're thinking, those are some awesome sideburns. I know. I worked on them for 4 years, and I basically haven't shaved since then, which is how I got my beard. But anyway, I think this was my senior year right at the Thanksgiving homecoming. But I was asked really to come today not to talk about my time at LFA, but to speak about why I joined the Marine Corps and what Veterans Day means to me. When I sat down to write down my thoughts, I honestly was at a loss for words for quite some time, and as Matt alluded to, that is a rare occasion for me. And I was trying to figure out why nothing was coming to me. And it eventually dawned on me that there is an important distinction between why I joined and why I fought. And somewhere in that dissonance, I found a lot of meaning in my time in the Marine Corps, and I'll try to explain. So this is why I joined. I was 15 when 9/11 happened. I was sitting in my sophomore year chemistry class with Miss Fowler, and in an instant, I was sitting in the chapel and watching my world kind of come crashing down before me. And interestingly, what stuck with me about that day was not the anger, not the fear, not any of those emotions of the moment, but it was this firefighter's face. That's Mike Kehoe, engine 28, ladder 11, FDNY. And what I couldn't get out of my head was, what on earth is causing this guy to run up those stairs when everyone else is running down? And I honestly didn't have an answer. Mr. McGee, who none of you really know, but he was a teacher here. He had a lot of friends who were in the fire department, and so I was surrounded by that for a while for my time here, and I couldn't get the thought out of my head. And then the second day of my sophomore year of college, a young Marine was helping his girlfriend move into the dorm just down the room from me. And he had just gotten back from Fallujah. I don't know how much you all know about Iraq and the battles in that, but Fallujah was the way city of the Iraq War. It was gritty, it was nasty, it was house to house, block by block, pretty horrific stuff. And I talked to him for over an hour. And the one thing that was so clear is that this guy could not wait to go back. And it blew my mind. And I asked him, why? Why would you want to go back to this place when it seems like everyone else is trying to run away from it? And he just looked at me and he said, because I'm a Marine. I can't explain it, but I have to go back. And what I realized in that moment was that look that I saw on Mike Kehoe's face was the exact same thing that I was hearing in this Marine's voice. And even though neither of them could articulate it to me, I knew I had to do something. I had to figure out what this ethereal thing was that they couldn't describe. Now, if you had asked me in the moment why I was joining the Marine Corps, I probably would have told you because I want to serve my country, or because I want to be part of something bigger than myself, or I want to push myself beyond my limits. But really, those were just the only things I knew that I could articulate for what this could possibly be. So I joined the Marine Corps, and I became an infantry officer. Now, Afghanistan at that time had come for my generation what Iraq was for the generation of Marines before me, just a few years before. When I joined my unit, I had 3 months to take 45 Marines and get them ready for combat. Now, the majority of them had never been, and neither had I. Fortunately, I met this guy. This is Sergeant Will Stacy. This was Will's 4th combat deployment. And although you can't see it, the guy was just kind of covered in tattoos from head to toe. And as you can see from the picture, I mean, this guy just oozed Marine. And he had this wonderful ability to make me feel like a Ken doll standing next to G.I. Joe. My favorite tattoo of his was this tattoo on his arm that said, "Live the good life, fight the good fight, die with your boots on." Now, what I loved about the tattoo was that it was misspelled, and the "your" was "you-are" because the tattoo artist had run out of room on his arm. Classic Marine stuff. And I loved to give him a hard time about it. And whenever I would, inevitably he'd look at me and just with this, that wry grin and this smile would say, "Hey, sir, life's imperfect. Adventure's what happens when things stop going right." So, for all our physical differences, and even despite the fact that he was way cooler than me, we shared a similar sense of humor and a very similar view on leadership. And that was, if we were going to ask these Marines to follow us into combat, they had to believe we cared, and we had to be willing to bleed with them. So we quickly set about training our Marines and getting them ready to go. Our mission when we arrived in Afghanistan was very simple. There was a main enemy resupply route that was funneling ammunition and IEDs into our area of the country, and my unit's job was to go basically sit on that supply line and disrupt that activity. Now there's two things I learned over the ensuing months, and there are two things that I never would have known when I joined. Now first, as I mentioned before, is the reasons we join are often very different from the reasons we fight. And the second is that these young Marines are capable of some pretty unbelievable things. This is our patrol base, built from nothing. Everything that we brought out there to help us build it hit an IED and broke down. 10 miles from the closest friendly unit, very little resupply, and completely surrounded by the enemy. At the left-hand corner is our patrol base. Walked all day. I want you to imagine for a second, every day for 9 months, waking up, putting on about 80 to 90 pounds of kit, and walking in knee-deep mud, trying to dodge gunfire, sidestepping IEDs, getting ambushed, counter-ambushing, going to bed at night in frozen dirt holes, rocked to sleep by the sound of incoming mortars. I want you to imagine what that does to your body and to your psyche. How many of you are seniors? Raise your hand if you're seniors. Okay, so you guys are around 18 years old. Clay Bernowski was 18 years old. He was my lead sweeper. That's the guy who every day walked in front of our platoon with a minesweeper to make sure none of us stepped on anything. Body covered in jungle rot, sores. He never missed a patrol. But it was things like this that brought us all together. It's what made us a family. Every day we'd patrol, and every night we'd gather around this fire, tell stories, we'd laugh, and we'd keep each other sane. We were all we had, just us, but we loved it. And then the worst day of my life happened. January 31st, 2012. We ran into the worst complex ambush I'd ever seen. Rockets, mortars, IEDs, heavy machine guns. My best friend, Will, was killed instantly right next to me. We got back to the patrol base that night after finishing out the fight, and all just collapsed from exhaustion, from devastation. Will's death shattered any illusion of safety that any of us ever had. Because if it could happen to a guy like that, it could happen to any of us. And as I sat there on our patrol base, all I could think was, how the hell am I going to walk out there tomorrow? How am I going to take that next step outside the wire when all my instincts are telling me to do is to crawl inside that sleeping bag, go to sleep, and never come out? And sitting there thinking, I started looking around at my Marines. I realized they were all thinking the exact same thing I was. And then something switched in my head, and I started thinking about Mike Kehoe. And it was in that moment that I realized for the first time what it was that allowed him to run up those stairs. What allowed that Marine to want to go back to Fallujah? What allowed Will to go back 4 times to combat? I realized for the first time what it meant to care about something enough, what it meant to love someone enough that I could do something that at first seemed to me to be impossible. So we went back out. It wasn't for America. It's not for mom and dad. It's for each other. The reasons why you join are not the same as the reasons why you fight. You join for America. You join for lofty ideals. You join for a sense of purpose. You join for yourself. But you fight because you love the person next to you. Okay, so what do I want you to take from any of this? First of all, this is not a recruiting pitch. Not that that story is a good recruiting pitch, but I'm not asking any of you to join the Marines. You've all read, presumably, Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried, and if you haven't, you should, because it's a phenomenal, phenomenal book. But you know that a true war story is never moral. It never seeks to instruct nor alter the behavior of men from doing what they've always done. But Tenny asked me to come here and say what I learned, so screw Tim O'Brien for a second. Will used to tell me that life is imperfect. Well, I want to amend that a bit. Life is messy. But the messiness is also what makes it beautiful. And all we can really hope to do is find the things that we're passionate about and live earnestly and live truthfully. And hope to someday, hopefully long in the future, die with a full heart, surrounded by the people we love. And the last thing I'll say is this. You all are capable of so much more than you could possibly imagine. You're more resilient than you could possibly imagine. So take risks and never stop looking for the things that are going to inspire you, because that is how you're going to inspire others. And I believe that is how you will move the world. That's all I got.
Thank you very much, Max. And if anyone, Max will stick around. If anyone would like to ask questions, feel free to come on up. Thank you very much.